Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel meeting of the 12th of June. My name's Tony Arias and I'm the presiding member. I'll introduce the other members. Leo Donoghue, who's the deputy presiding member. John Syme, who's the specialist member. And City of Rockingham representatives, we have Mayor Hamblin and Councillor Jex. And from the DAP Secretariat, we have Claire Ortlet and Ashley Kelly. Actually, it's really nice to have such a full room and full attendance, quite unusual. I don't think I've done a meeting where so well represented, so welcome everyone. So with that, I will formally declare the meeting open at 9:31 and acknowledge the traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. The meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024 and panel members may refer to technical devices to assist them in considering information before them. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A. Apologies, we have two, Councillor Buchan and Councillor Jones. Item 3, members on leave of absence, we have nil. Item 4, noting of minutes, just for information that previous meetings are available on the DAP website. So we move to part B of the agenda, City of Rockingham. Item 1 is declarations of due consideration. Members, are you able to confirm that you've duly considered the information provided in part B of the agenda and part B of the related information, including a request for additional information, which was published on the 11th of June. If you could do that by simply raising your hand, or duly declared, thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Members, are there any declarations that need to be made?
Yes, Chair, just the usual impartiality from myself and Councillor Jex that we've passed on to the minute taker.
Mayor Hamblin, is that as a result of the matter being considered by council?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've declared that you're able to deal with the matter with impartiality. Thank you.
Yes.
In accordance with standing orders, I've noted the declarations and happy for Councillor Jex and Mayor Hamblin to participate in the meeting and vote on the item. So with that, we go to item 3, which is Form 1 applications. We have 2.
So yes, through the Chair, I'd like to move a procedural motion to bring forward DAP 2402661 lot 431 Surf Drive to be the first item on our agenda.
Yep, thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Yep, Councillor Jex has seconded. Given it's a procedural motion, there's no discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, so we're going to deal with item 3.2 first, and we do have a presentation. Ross Underwood from Planning Solutions. Ross, you have done these presentations before. You understand you have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you when you're getting close to that.
Thank you, presiding member, DAP members and the people here. Mr. Presiding member, I can't take the credit for the full gallery today. That credit goes to the other item, but this is a simple matter, so we should be able to get this out of your hair fairly quickly and move on to the other item. So thank you. We are proposing an 85-place childcare centre, which is located in quite a good location. With good access, we control and own the abutting adjoining land, And the land directly opposite on the north side of Surf Drive is proposed to be a park. So it provides for a great location where we're not providing any impacts on existing residents in the area. We have been working with the officers and there's a recommendation for approval, which we're grateful for. And as you would have seen from our presentation, there's one condition that we seek to discuss and have removed in order not to unduly constrain the proposal. And that relates to 5 trees, which we've shown on our own plans as trees to be retained if possible, working around the design constraints that exist with designing an outdoor play area for a childcare centre. And this is not something that we contest lightly, because trees are important. I think we can all agree to that, but there are design constraints and issues that may arise through the more detailed investigations that would occur at the next phase that may mean that some of the trees may not be suitable for retention or may have to be removed for other reasons. The obvious reason is the bushfire restrictions, and they come out through our bushfire management plan and are reflected in condition 15.2. That requires trees to be a certain distance from buildings and for canopies to be 5 metres apart. Now, given how close these trees are to each other, almost certainly some of them, perhaps 2 or 3, would have to be removed for that reason alone. And that reason is not reflected in the wording of condition 9. The other thing that comes to mind is that we have been working at a very preliminary level to design the outdoor space. And there are some plans that have been provided to the city and are included within the DAP agenda. Page 926 of the PDF includes some of those options. We've had some options included that have the trees being retained, and I'll sort of flick this up in the screen as one of the options on page 926. It shows how we might design a childcare centre to include 4 play areas around the retention of the trees. We've also prepared options that show a couple of trees being retained and another option showing all of them being removed. But we think they are quite valuable, and we intend to work with the childcare provider and the playscape designer to see if those trees can be incorporated within the landscaping, because they'll provide a positive contribution to the amenity, the amount of greenery in that play area, and also providing natural shade for children playing in there, and also something that's a bit interesting and I guess a counterpoint to a bike track and a fort that would otherwise go in a location like that. The reason I raise this with DAP is that we don't want to be unduly constrained. The condition as written requires that the trees can be removed with the city's consent if there's construction damage, which sounds like a very specific wording that doesn't take into account those other considerations that we've raised. We do intend in good faith to work with the proposed proponents of the childcare centre and would seek the DAP's agreement and consent to remove that condition on the basis that we'll continue to do what we can to work within the constraints and keep as many trees as we can if possible, as intended and as shown on our plans. So that being said, I'll be happy to answer questions. I have seen on the screen my colleague Brandon Bradburn, who has been working with me, is viewing, and also our client Reese Kelly, who's one of the proponents of this development. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Members, questions of Mr. Underwood?
Thank you, Chair. Ross, Mr. Underwood, sorry. What if that condition just removed the words due to damage caused by site work? So we still kept it in there because the environment's pretty important to us as city. So we would keep condition 9 the same way, but just remove due to damage caused by site work so that the city would be up to speed with that.
Yeah, okay. So it would then read if the trees become no longer suitable for retention, and with prior written approval of the city.
Yes.
And my only concern around that is that it doesn't provide much guidance in terms of how would the city decide if the trees are or are not worthy of retention. That's my only concern, that we may end up in a situation where we end up in a dispute and we may need to, if necessary, bring it back to the DAP, which I think would be a tremendous waste of the DAP's time.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the intent is to keep the 5 trees, correct?
That's our intent. I think with the bushfire restrictions alone, that probably won't be possible.
But that's the
we'd
intent.
like to if possible.
Yeah, and I think Mayor Hamblin's suggestion provides that flexibility. It's less prescriptive. So I would think that working with the city's officers, provided it's not a frivolous requirement, there would be reasonable discretion. Okay. Members, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
Thank you for your time.
We have the city's officers. Mike, are you the right person to?
I'll refer to my colleague, David.
Okay.
Sure.
So would you like to?
No problem.
It's David, isn't it? David Banovich?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. David, would you like to make any overall comments about the application, or are you just happy to respond to questions?
Look, I'm happy to respond to questions.
Well, perhaps the first one, if I leave, is the suggested change by the applicant to condition 9. Do you have a view on that?
Our view is that the application as submitted suggests an intention to retain the trees if possible. We think that the retention of the trees is critical to the theme of this development, given that the plans also suggest this is a nature-based childcare premise. So it would be sort of contrary to the intent if you start removing what's already there available that could potentially be retained. I guess in terms of the trees themselves, with respect to the bushfire argument, we accept that, but there is also the ability to retain trees if you can demonstrate that within the asset protection zone, the tree canopy is within less than 15% of the total APZ, which in this case it clearly is, where the canopies kind of interject into each other. So you could potentially make the argument that these trees are one canopy and wouldn't have a bushfire implication, but that can be explored as part of the detailed design stage. Now, we also think that this condition could simply just, with the motion that the Mayor has proposed, you just change the wording vegetation retention to tree management plan. And it's pretty much subject to detailed design. At detailed design, we can inspect the concern in relation to the trees, subject to further considerations of the bushfire and the detailed design, which will demonstrate the levels. We also think that there are avenues for potential retention. If the issue is around tree safety and infants potentially climbing on those trees, there are options to mitigate that as well. And we certainly wouldn't be open to discussing the removal of a tree or two if it's clearly demonstrated that it can't be retained.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions of David?
No, I think Mr. Banovich is actually, my concern was around the bushfire, but I think he's answered that already. So.
Okay, so just to be clear, the suggestion by Mayor Hamblin in terms of changing condition 9, that would be a satisfactory outcome?
Yes, because it would just basically read, prior to applying for a building permit, a tree management plan rather than a vegetation retention management plan must be submitted, etc., and just take out the bit about retention due to the cause damage by site works, because this is a detailed design matter. And given that the plans suggest that they could potentially be retained, we think there should be a measure in place to look at that consideration.
Yep. Okay. There's no further questions. Thank you, David.
Nice.
Okay, members, we will now move to the item. So item 3.2, number 431 Surf Drive for childcare premises. Is someone prepared to move the motion in the RAR? Mayor Hamblin?
Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Jacks? Mayor Hamblin, did you want to talk to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Given that this has gone through council and it has numerous conditions and advice notices, and it has been out for public comment, and it's gone through as an approval. Some of the comments that came back, some of the submissions were around traffic management, which I think the proponent has addressed. And some of the submissions were around the number of childcare centres that we have approved. But again, that's not a planning matter. So with that small change to condition 9, I'm happy to approve.
Okay. Mayor Hamblin, minor change to the condition?
You can do it with a greater mover and
Yeah,
seconder. if you
okay.
want.
Yeah. So councillor Jacks, you're happy to change condition 9, given it's a minor change?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, but I'd also like to speak to this in due course as
no
well,
problem.
thanks.
Okay, so the substantive motion is to approve, and with that minor change to condition 9. Councillor Jacks, did you want to make comment on the application?
Just a few things around trees, and it's based on feedback that I get from the community and a matter that's raised with me often. So we've got significant trees on the site, and there's some that should be retained and protected. And I note that the 5 trees we're talking about are on the very corner of the site, so it's not in the middle of the site. Oh, it's on the very corner. And so it was good to see the applicants say that they intend to retain some of these 5 trees, if possible. Well, I was a little bit concerned about the if possible. For me, they're not strong enough. I hesitate to use the term weasel words, but I will. I'm a straight shooter, and this is very important to our community, retention of trees. And of course, I was very happy with our officer's response on the conditions around the building permit and vegetation retention management plan. I think that's very important. And again, under the regulations, there's not much we can do as a city to protect trees better. There's a lot of information, a lot of community concern about losing tree canopy, but it's as much as we can do now. Is put these conditions on under the planning regulations, and many say to me that, I mean, we know that WA has the weakest protections for our trees on private land in the country. That is a fact. We've been seeing a lot going on in the media, and what's happening with climate, etc., and the importance of tree canopy. I mean, many would say under the current planning framework, when it comes to tree protections, many would argue that they're no longer fit for purpose, and we need to catch up. And as I said, this issue is raised with me often. So I just want to, draw to your attention. I think it's very important that those 5 trees that are on the very corner, that we do everything we can. We want to support this development. It's a good development, and there's a lot to be admired in it. But I think we need, when it comes to this tipping point of the trees stay, the trees go, there's a bit of judgment there, and I think the city want to see everything done possible without making it too unviable to make sure those trees are protected. Because quite often it's a line wall when it comes to tree protection, and it gets down to what's going on the ground. So I just wanted to raise the issue about tree protection. It's very important to the people in our city. It's raised with me often, and heat island effect and canopy and all these things are huge. So that's as much as I've got to say on that.
Thank you, councillor Jacks. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Anyone else wanting to speak to the motion?
Oh, simply that I agree with those comments. I think this is a very nice stand of trees. It would be good if they could be retained. I do understand that there might be a situation may arise where they can't for different reasons. However, I like the fact that council would have to be involved in the decision for any of them to be removed. So on that basis, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Simon, did you want to make any comment?
Yes, look, I agree with those sentiments. I do note, regarding the existing trees, I do note that there are around 7 locations in the car park noted on the plan, which are clearly tree locations for new trees. condition 9 requires a landscape management plan. I would expect that the city will have a pretty close look at that and ensure that the new trees which you put in are substantial and as big as they possibly can be, because I think I agree it's a very important point.
Thank you. I'll be supporting the motion as well. I think in terms of the planning framework, it's a use that is capable of being permitted and approved. So from that perspective, I think it's probably a difficult site for residential development, being on the junction of Warnborough Avenue and Surf Drive. So I think from that perspective, and opposite open space, I think the site minimised the impact on surrounding residential areas. I know comments about traffic safety, but the traffic impact statement suggests that the increase in traffic won't be significant and traffic management can be managed appropriately, and that's reflected in the RAR and supported by the city's officers. So from that perspective, I'm prepared to also support the motion. Mayor Hamlin, did you want to make any closing comment?
No, Chair, I think everything that was relevant has been brought up, and we have noted the public submissions in our discussions.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to approve subject to conditions and noting a change to condition 9. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. So we now move to item 3.1, and we have a number of presenters for 3.1. So, the first presenter, Jess Beaver. Once again, I just remind everyone that you have 3 minutes for the presentations. Prepare to be a little bit flexible.
If you need. I'll talk as fast as I can. Great, thank you. Thank you, members, and thank you everyone for your time today to talk through this proposal. As you can see here, we've got quite a passionate team of proponents as well as that project team. And so I'm just going to be talking shortly to the architectural merit of the proposal itself. So Long Point Marine Corps and Short Stay, we're proposing it is in the new Kennedy Bay Coastal Village. And what we're really focusing on here is a social communal focused landmark. There's already significant works happening on the civil work component of the site, with the birdie and clubhouse already included in the early stage. And we're nestled, I guess, in a really fantastic location and quite unique to this coastline of Kennedy Bay, close to a very significant public open space that's under works, as well as a number of new development sites for residential and the activity centre itself. In short, we're proposing to provide a number of hospitality and leisure facilities and F&B, including short stay accommodation nestled on the back half of the building, which sits adjacent to Sea Beach Way, just at the top left. This is located over the sleeved car park below on ground floor. And then to the front facing ocean side, we propose a 2-storey tavern, including a kiosk al fresco and an independent craft brewery that is located along the future foreshore plaza. In terms of some of the cues for our design references, we have a very passionate client who is a Rockingham local, and we've looked to hone in on the chapter of Rockingham and its mid-century cues in some iconic destinations, as well as looking at precedents in a successful series of established landmark destination venues on the East Coast and West Coast. The short stay accommodation is a very boutique, smaller independent offering, a series of 9 keys located over 2 stories, with the parking included below as mentioned. And what we see this being is a full circle holistic offering for people coming to visit the brewery and tavern, and for local visitors to the area. We've considered this in terms of privacy, overlooking and acoustic properties to the future residents of the lot to the south, as well as thinking about access and amenity for those visiting the future accommodation. The brewery and distillery is proposed on the foreshore plaza, flanked 350 square metres, We're working alongside a series of technical experts and passionate brewers to provide a really fantastic instilled imprint for Rockingham, servicing the local area. For us, in terms of the architectural intent as well, we've purposely located this along the plaza to create a landmark destination, much similar to the shores of things like Shelter Brewery in Bustleton. Meanwhile, we've purposely located the kiosk and garden bar adjacent to the future POS. What we envision this being is a really interfaced, generous offering close to the open space that can be not only used for future patrons of the venue, but the local community as well, with offerings of coffee, ice cream and family-friendly takeaways. This is all adjacent to a future playground, the jetty that will be located on the shore short by, and we really see this driving a destination-driven venue by not only by car, but by sand and by sea as well. We have currently proposed 600 patrons across the 2 stories, and so the tavern offering itself, all facing the ocean and I guess unbroken views. And we're really honing in on with the expert team, focusing on a family-friendly venue with healthy food options, a diverse offering of local heroed drinks and offerings, to ensure that this venue sits as a long-lasting icon and a destination that will serve for years to come to the local population. Upstairs also, we've been focusing wholly on providing protection year-round for the venue, given that we have purposely located the building with our first design principles in mind to protect from the sea breeze. We're really grateful for the support of the council with a unanimous vote of support from the City of Rockingham and recommendation for approval for the city planning team. We see Long Point, in short, as a high-quality benchmark offering and potentially the first of its kind for the new Kennedy Bay Coastal Village. And we really look forward to, as a team, providing a destination venue that supports the community and creates a new social hub for the likes of Port Kennedy and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Members, questions?
Not really.
No.
Beautiful.
Jess, are you the right person to maybe talk about car parking location?
I can probably pass that on to Marina. We have our traffic engineer here today.
Yeah, not
More
from
about
more
siting.
from a design perspective. None of the images you showed show the car parking. Are you able to show an image with the car parking?
Of course. So I think probably the best image will be closer to the front. So this one here. This shows the entrance, so the crossover purposely located on Sea Beach Way. That was also worked in alignment with the local development policy. And so there's 45 bays located, sleeved within the back end, all on grade, with the access from cars coming out onto the left here, then walking down the Foreshore Plaza. And then also, not too clear on this drawing, apologies, but also access walking directly into the garden bar and beer garden from the parking sleeved
Okay,
and as well.
The off-site car parking that is subject to the condition that is being
Yes, that's
questioned.
right. And
None of those plans show that.
no, so our drawings in the DA report showed the site plan with local precinct parking, but that's talked to further in the traffic impact statement with the reciprocal parking from the local Kennedy Bay parking lots.
Okay, all right.
Rain and Marina will probably be able to speak both to that as well in terms of the bigger picture for the parking strategy for the area.
Members, any other questions?
Just to comment, really pleased to see the history of Rockingham included in the plans. And also to Kennedy Bay to have the short stay would be very valuable, I'm sure. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel members. I won't take up too much of your time this morning, but Rain Dial representing Place Development as the development manager for Kennedy Bay and speaking in support of the proposed tavern, brewery and short stay accommodation development. The proposal before you today represents a long-standing commitment by the landowner, Western Australia Beach and Golf Resort, or WABGR, to deliver a legacy project through creating an iconic and visionary coastal community which will transform the Port Kennedy coastline. The project, upon completion, will be home to a thriving village centre, 900 new homes, the reinvigorated and world-class Links Kennedy Bay golf course, award-winning Links clubhouse featuring a new pro shop, birdie bar and restaurant. As the last north-facing beachfront parcel of land in WA, the village centre will attract best-in-class offerings, creating a vibrant hub for community and visitors alike. The village centre is bookended by an activated foreshore, including a new public jetty, the Links golf course and the popular Nest Adventure Playground. The microbrewery site has long been earmarked for large format food and beverage since we first undertook macro planning of the village centre almost 5 years ago. The site is one of only 2 coastal commercial nodes within Kennedy Bay, which is able to capitalise upon unobstructed northern aspect and views of the Indian Ocean. We've worked collaboratively with the Long Point project team to ensure the development seamlessly integrates with the surrounding public realm and is consistent with the vision for the village centre to create a relaxed coastal village which attracts new residents and visitors alike. The microbrewery has been designed to respond to the planned activations within the adjacent foreshore, engage with the adjoining public realm and provides a significant contribution towards the overall vibrancy of the community. The development before you today for consideration is the pivotal first step towards delivering on the vision for the Kennedy Bay Village Centre. Place Development and WABGR fully support the proposed development, inclusive of the alternate recommendation prepared by the applicant, and are happy to answer any questions from the panel.
Right on time. In fact, we've got another minute. You sure you don't?
Yeah, no. I won't take up. Adrian can have my minute.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So happy to accommodate that. Members, questions of Ray? No, I do have a question about context.
Yeah.
You talked about it fitting in well in terms of the sort of the town centre.
Yeah.
Maybe you can elaborate on that, some of those surrounding uses. See, the land to the north is recreation.
Yeah.
To the south and east?
Yeah, so it's still being worked through, but I suppose the macro planning exercise that we've undertaken, the other coastal node to the west of the site, that's currently owned by the WAPC, but we're in negotiations to purchase that land. That would be potentially short stay accommodation or some form of hotel. As we come sort of south within the site towards the golf course, we're looking at either predominantly townhouses or apartments, maybe with a gym or something on top. The built form is still being worked through, and then it would be a series of townhouses to the north of Kennedy Bay Quay. On the southern side, lot 4, we're looking at sort of a boutique grocer, maybe a cafe, quick serve retail type uses in there. And then predominantly the rest of the village centre would be townhouses or short stay accommodation.
So predominantly tourist type accommodation when you talk about short stay?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Like
Not
Airbnb.
permanent residential.
There will be some permanent residential, but we're still exploring how feasible short stay would be within the village centre.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Adrian.
Morning panel. Adrian Drew with Lateral Planning, representing Long Point Brewing Proprietary Limited, the proponent of the proposed tavern brewery shore stay accommodation development at lot 3022 Moorfontein Parade, Port Kennedy. For context, as we've just heard, over the last 10 years, the landowner and proponent of the Kennedy Bay residential precinct, in conjunction with the city and the state, have actively progressed the planning framework to guide the development of Kennedy Bay. The draft Kennedy Bay Local Structure Plan and recently approved Kennedy Bay Coastal Village Local Development Plan clearly set out the vision and objectives of the area, which includes a dedicated mixed-use active town centre positioned on the coast. The coastal village forms the active centre of the broader development area, centred around an expansive, active foreshore landscape. This development is a catalyst for implementing the active vision of the town centre. Designed by MJA Studio, it incorporates the history of the locality to create an attractive and vibrant precinct reflecting the estate developer's vision. We would like to thank the City of Rockingham for their assistance in progressing the application and their comprehensive RAR. The RAR addresses all the relevant matters that have been raised throughout the assessment process, and we would also like to thank the Council of the City for unanimously supporting the proposal. As detailed in my deputation request, we respectfully request the Development Assessment Panel's support for the application with amendments to the conditions consistent with our alternative recommendation. I won't be able to run through all of our requested changes in detail. However, in summary, the proposed changes seek to provide a clear, fair and reasonable conditions that directly relate to this development. Specifically, I would like to draw the DAP's attention to the deletion of conditions 14, 20 and 21. Condition 14 relates to the public art contribution, that this does not take into consideration the voluntary commitment of approximately $250,000 worth of public art from the landowner, WABGR, which will be installed in the adjacent landscape foreshore and public art plaza, which immediately abut the site. Condition 20 relates to the public access easement over the golf course car park, which is a Parks and Recreation Reserve owned by the state of WA and not within the applicant's control. Imposing a public access easement on that land that is effectively publicly accessible and unrelated to the application, we consider is inappropriate and requires the consent of an unrelated third party. Similarly, condition 21 requires a legal agreement between WABGR and the city over proposed future lot 4 in the Coastal Village precinct. Proposed lot 4 has not yet been created and is not the subject of a development application. The use, built form, outcome, and ultimately the number and arrangement of parking bays is non-existent. Again, we are of the view this is not related to the development, unduly constrains land, again, not related to the development, and we request its deletion. The proposed condition amendments are crucial to ensure the conditions are reasonable and directly relate to our development. Thank you for your time. I'm joined by the developer and project team as cohort of us here, so we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Adrian. Members, questions?
I just had a quick question about the car parking. You've got a deficiency in car parking, so you're going to pick up additional car parking in the public parking area, 38 bays plus on street. Is that what you're talking?
Yes, that's
Just wanted to confirm
yeah.
that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Simon?
Yeah, just a quick question on the relationship, the applicant's lateral planning. The developer of this development is WABGR?
The developer is Long Point Brewing. The WABGR is the landowner.
The landowner, and the landowner, who spent the money on the public art in the
landowner, WABGR.
WABGR. So what's the relationship between WABGR and the developer of this site?
Do you mind if I am able to clarify that with you?
Yeah, I can clarify that. So the
Darren, can I ask,
Yeah.
just given we're live streaming, if maybe you sit down in front of the laptop, please?
Sure. Thank you. So the proponent is a special purpose vehicle. To date, the costs have been funded by one of the Wormel Group entities, but there's a series of legal agreements now that are now being executed for one of the Wormel Group entities and WABGR to come together in a joint venture to develop this. So I guess the bottom line there is that WABGR has an incentive
is WABGR, is it a wholly owned entity of WABGR as we speak, is the question?
The proponent?
Yeah.
No, the proponent will become a joint venture entity between WABGR and Wormel Group.
Okay. Okay.
So to the extent that WABGR has commitments like public art and parking, etc., outside the boundary of this site, it's in its interest to deliver on those for the good of this project.
That.
Yeah,
it's in its interest. It's a matter of what the relationship between this entity,
yes,
and the one that the public art and WABGR as the primary developer.
yes. So WABGR will have a shareholding in this entity and will also have common directors.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that issue, so the contribution to public art that's already been agreed to, is that through a DA process like this, or is it simply a voluntary contribution to public art?
Yeah.
It's not through a DA process, that's through the landscape and foreshore works. that WABGR is undertaking immediately adjacent to the
So
site.
it's part of the landscape plan.
So is it a voluntary or is it a?
Voluntary.
It is voluntary, okay. All right, thank you.
But it's under a plan that's been agreed.
Correct.
To the city.
But it's,
And the
but it's intrinsic to the landscape plan. It's not a public art element of the landscape plan.
It's intrinsic to the landscape plan.
Okay.
Mayor Ham,
Yeah, sorry, Adrian, deleting that, the officers are concerned about that setting a precedent. So can you explain to me, I mean, I don't know, public art's been part of, I think, every development I've ever been involved in. So the public art will still occur, but I'm just concerned getting rid of condition 14.
Yeah, we understand the city's concern around the removal of condition, the public art condition.
Yeah.
We don't think that it is fair to constrain the landowner who's already committed a significant amount of money to the delivery of public art in this precinct. The purpose of public art, in our view, is to improve streetscape, improve the amenity for the locality, which is being delivered. The deletion of this condition does not diminish that.
Thank you.
thank you.
Are there further works to be done in the public realm by the developer?
Are further works
Yes.
other than what, sorry?
I mean, you've spent some money. Will you be spending more money on public art in the public realm?
Yes.
Okay.
So the works haven't been completed, they're currently being completed, so it'll be through the delivery over the next 5 years, 2 to 5 years.
So you could argue that this expenditure is recognised in the future work
I think it's
outside of this site.
Yes.
I think it's a little nuanced in that this site sits within the context of a larger master plan being developed by WABGR, and that includes substantial commitments to public open space, parking, public art, etc., etc. This application to some extent does rely on that, but there are common parties there in WABGR.
Okay.
So Darren, just to understand the context, as part of the broader planning, there's a public art contribution, and it's a question to the city's officers later. And this forms part of that. That's what you're suggesting?
That's right. So
Yeah.
this particular proposal and the wider project that is Kennedy Bay, if you like, they interrelate very closely with each other and rely on each other for amenity, parking, landscape, public art, etc.
Okay. Councillor Jacks?
Just got some questions. I'd really like to understand this better. I'm a bit confused about it all.
Sure.
So I'll tell you what my concerns are and maybe you could respond to those. So in the city, we have a planning policy, 3.3.25 percentage of public art, private developer contribution. Look, that seeks to facilitate the provision of public art as part of a development application approval process by applying for a percentage of public art. So now, as I understand, the West Australian Beach and Golf Resort Pty Limited is the landowner and subdivider, and as such is a different entity to that of the tavern. It's a different entity than the developer of the tavern. So for us, what I'm thinking, and perhaps you could respond to this, the onus is on each developer to contribute equitably in terms of public art as per our policy. So in applying this policy, foreshore works and public plaza are considered a separate matter. This is what I'm thinking, and perhaps you could address this. Are considered a separate matter by us, forming a part of the foreshore improvement works for the development of the estate as a whole. And look, I'm concerned that should this condition be deleted, then a precedent could be created. I agree with Mayor Hamblin here, could be created, meaning that similar contributions may not be imposed on subsequent developments in the local centre. And as a council, we need to be very mindful of precedents and sticking to our local policies. So perhaps you could provide me with some reassurances around why you think condition 14 is okay and we shouldn't oppose it.
Sure. So I think where this doesn't set a precedent is that if you consider a scenario where WABGR is the developer of the wider Kennedy Bay area, WABGR is also effectively the developer of this tavern. All that's happened is that Wormel Group has joined as a joint venture party. WABGR still remains a developer of this site.
So Wormel are sort of not contributing.
Wormel are absolutely contributing, but as a joint venture partner with WABGR.
Can I first ask a follow-up question? If you look at subclause 1 of condition 14, can you get that up?
I think it's the joint venture nature of the ownership structure that might be confusing things a little here.
No, it's not confusing. If the words "to be located within the subject site" were excluded from that condition, would that meet your concerns?
Our concern is that it's an additional $65,000 as to what has already been committed and not taken into consideration under the current wording of the condition.
But you've still got the developer still has work to do outside of this, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Simon, I think the principle is that if the condition wasn't otherwise satisfied and a condition could be constructed which would ensure that, then I think that would satisfy the proponent.
Say again, if the
So I think the concern here is that by removing this condition, there might not be any public art.
yeah.
And I think if a condition could be constructed that said that if that public art wasn't delivered, then it would be delivered by this proposal, then that would probably work. I don't know how to construct such a condition, but
we might suggest that Mr. Ross might consider that as an alternative, and I do want to ask, sorry.
Oh, no, you go.
Yeah. I asked a question earlier about the commitment to the public art outside this DA. Is that a condition of some development approval or subdivision approval, or is it simply a commitment by the landowner?
It's a commitment by the landowner.
Okay, so there's no formal requirement?
well, my understanding is it's included in a landscape master plan.
It is included in the landscape master plan, which is being developed with the landowner, WABGR, the state and the city of Rockingham. And through that landscape master plan, it is earmarked where public art will be provided.
Okay, and I think the comment made by Councillor Jacks is probably valid. There is a local planning policy, and it is only policy, so we will have due regard for that. We're not bound by that, but from my experience, it seems to be a consistent imposition on developments like this to require public art, and it's probably a contemporary requirement now. I can understand the council being reluctant to delete that if there's no formal commitment to ensuring that this place does have that public art, and it generally complies with the policy. And I think if, in my mind, the potential for compliance is there, but making sure that there is some form of formal commitment through a condition. Now, whether it's through this or some other means, and maybe it is a question to the city's officers in terms of how we might do that.
Sorry, can I just follow up on that? Can I reframe my question, please? Is it possible for the public art that you would be required to do to be incorporated into the development being done in the public realm generally?
We would like that to be the case if we can.
Well, the question is it possible?
I might refer to yourself, Darren.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
is it possible for you to incorporate some of the public art works which you would be obliged to do under this development within the public realm outside of this development?
Without it being an extra $65,000, is that the?
Well, that's between you and the developer of that's between Longgrave Brewing and the developer of the public realm, which is KBGR or whatever its acronym is.
I think what we're keen to avoid is a scenario where WABGR meets its commitments to public art under the Landscape Master Plan. And then this proposal is expected to provide another $65,000 of public art.
As I understand it, there's no dollar value attached to the WABGR commitment.
No,
So
but it's pretty impressive.
no, but there's no minimum dollar value attached to it.
Right.
No, there is not.
Okay.
Not through a formal condition.
No, okay, thank you. That'll work. Okay. That'll work.
No. I'll
Lee, you
leave
had
my
a question?
I'll
No,
leave
no,
it there.
okay.
It's covered.
No, I had a slightly different question and to do with conditions that require easements. Now, Adrian, you talked about public access being available. Is that through a road?
Yes, that's through a road.
So is a public road?
Yes, my understanding that is a public road that's not closed off at any time and can be accessed by any person of the public. It's to service the public golf course.
Okay, so ordinarily, if it's a public road, there wouldn't be a need for any easements for access, and perhaps something will clarify that with the city. But if it's not a public road, then how are people ensured access?
Well, so it's a Parks and Rec reserve.
Yeah, that's not tenure, but unfortunately, that's a reservation.
Yeah.
So we're talking about tenure. So if it's not a public road, how do you guarantee access to the development?
It would be via an easement. Now, we don't think that our client can facilitate that an easement would definitely be created over that lot if it's not a public road. Now, I'd also like to point out the relationship between the car park, the golf course car park and our development.
Yeah, that was a separate matter. So I'm really trying to understand the access requirements. So you think it's a public road?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm sure the city can confirm whether that's the case or not. I understand your comment about third-party compliance, and that's generally the case, but there must be some agreement to provide access currently.
No.
There isn't.
Not between our development and the golf course car park.
No, I'm talking about the actual access, not the car park. So there's no arrangement in terms of access. Car park, the car park, part of it is located on land not under the ownership entity, correct?
Yeah.
So what is the agreement in relation to the car parking?
There is no agreement in relation to the car parking. Now, if I can circle back to the preparation of the local development plan that was approved for the Kennedy Bay Coastal Village precinct and supported by an approved car parking strategy, which assessed the car parking over the entire village. It effectively was used to demonstrate there's adequate car parking in the overall centre to cater for the demand. Our development does not directly rely on the golf course car park for parking. There's 117 on-street bays in the local centre precinct, 38 bays in the foreshore reserve, and 50 bays in the Kennedy Bay boat launching area as well that form the parking to the overall precinct. Now, in that was included the golf course car park. We do not require and are not relying on a a sole relationship between the two developments.
All right, so just to confirm what you're saying, that all the car parking proposed by the development is on land, either public roads or land you control. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the condition relates to, I guess, dealing with additional car parking?
Correct.
All right, okay, that's clear to me. Members, other questions of Adrian or the team? Mayor Hamlin, you look like you've got a question.
No, I'm just concerned about condition 20 and 21 being deleted, and I wouldn't mind asking our officers for some input into
Okay,
that if we
All right, well,
could.
we will get that opportunity shortly. If there's no further question, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Ross, are you in the hot seat?
My colleague Chris,
Not hot, warm seat, I should say.
thanks for being warm.
All right. Mike, did you want to make any sort of comments about the application before
Yeah.
you get into questions?
Well, I guess from an outset, look, from the City of Rockingham's perspective and the council's perspective, we support the proposal. We think there are a number of really good attributes that would come to Port Kennedy, which has been long overdue. The development ticks all the boxes in terms of the urban design initiatives that we were seeking for the site. And we had a really good collaborative working relationship with the preparation of the local development plan side of things with place development and so forth. So for the city, the big ticket item is, from the discussion, it sounds like it's public art and it's also parking. From a public art perspective, the city's policy for public art's been in place for a number of years. It doesn't apply to all development. We've prescribed where we think it's reasonable to apply to larger scale developments such as this one. The point that was raised as to how it would apply to this proposal is that it applies to the development. It doesn't apply to works that are currently being undertaken by the subdivider, WABGR, in relation to other areas of Kennedy Bay, even though we acknowledge that the public art, where it's been identified, is actually not far from, or it's actually adjacent to the development site within the actual foreshore itself. But that is purely voluntary. That's outside the scope of the city's policy, which deals with development. So the policy applies where a proponent nominates either to provide public artwork in a publicly visible location within the boundaries of an approved development site, or provide a cash in lieu payment to enable the city to procure artwork for the installation on public land within the vicinity of the approved development. So those are the options for the proponent. We're happy with either.
Just to clarify, I made a comment earlier, it is only a policy, Mark.
It is.
And it is a city policy.
Yes.
And this panel has due regard for that, but is not bound by it. So
Correct.
if, because your comment about this public art being adjoining the site has some relevance to me. And should be taken into account.
Well,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, look, absolutely right. And if the JDAP chose, for whatever reason, to vary it, it would need to have a substantiated planning reason to depart from a planning policy. It shouldn't just depart on a whim, and I'm not sure it will, sure it won't. Acknowledging that WABGR is already in the process of undertaking some, it sounds like, serious public artwork. I've only just recently been able to ascertain where it's actually being proposed. It is adjacent to the development site. There is a nexus in the relation to what is occurring and also what is occurring in terms of the relationship between the proponent and WABGR and WABGR. So I guess it's really within the parameters of the panel to decide based on that whether there are extenuating circumstances with respect to public art.
Yeah. So if I can indulge, the objective of the policy is to create points of differentiation, interest, through public art.
If I could speak freely, I think that the broad objectives are probably going to be achieved in relation to public art in the vicinity of that location. It wasn't clear to me until just now that WABGR is a joint venture with Wormel and will continue with the ownership of and the development of the site. So, and they are also the subdivider. So that's a unique alignment of parties, plus the artwork's already proceeding, another alignment in the vicinity of the development. So it's really up to the panel to decide in those circumstances if it chooses to accept those arrangements.
Mr. Simon.
Quick follow-up. If the panel was so minded as to think, well, it's a reasonable proposition that the artwork, that public art needs to be in place, but it can be not on this site.
Yeah.
We've got two choices. We could either exclude the delete the condition, or for example, as I thought before, to remove the requirement to be located on the site.
Well, there is another option, if I could put it forward, is that the proponent could actually, WABGR could reconsider the scope of the project for the foreshore and say, well, they might actually adjust the scope. Instead of doing 250, it might be something less, and then offering up something more to make up the difference.
That would be practically how it would happen.
Yeah, yeah.
We can't be party to that at this stage.
Right.
The question is whether we either, if we were minded to do it, either take out condition 14 entirely, or simply take out the words to be located within the subject site, which would allow, I think, WABGR to actually say, we'll provide $65,000 worth of public art in this location.
That's correct. That could happen. They could change the scope. They could of the foreshore artwork and put the balance on the site.
This is foreshore artwork, and this is Long Bay artwork.
Yeah. So look, from I don't have the discretion per se to vary from that, but I'm acknowledging that it is a unique circumstance, but we don't want to create a precedent at the same time, because I don't want to be another JDAT meeting where we talk about public art on the other commercial parts of this.
This is, I must say, this is starting to become a bit of a precedent, because we had this this exact discussion regarding the city of Fremantle yesterday. Exactly the same circumstances.
And I think the issue of precedent is relevant, and I think there are some circumstances that might lead this panel to deal with it differently. We've referred to this site as a town centre or a village centre, and presumably the foreshore part forms part of that. If a contribution was made to the city, it would make sense that it would go in that public realm.
You're correct, Mr.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is potentially a way of facilitating that. So maybe the developer doesn't pay twice, but it achieves the public art objectives. It avoids the issue of precedent. I just wonder whether the way forward is to maybe retain the condition but modify it. It refers to the public art policy, but also provides further guidance that actually says it can be utilised within that public realm.
Yeah.
If I can respond to that, with regard to, I guess, public art at the foreshore, that is a non-statutory contribution that was derived from the negotiations around the structure planning and the ability to undertake improvement works in the foreshore for the developer as a whole. So that is non-statutory. With regard to our policy, the city's simply taken a policy approach in regards to applying the condition. As you have shown, this additional information sort of wasn't presented earlier, so we can consider it prior to the meeting. But within the policy framework, there is an either-or option. So there is the option of the developer delivering the public art or providing a cash in lieu contribution to the city, which can then invest in the public art in the public domain in the proximity to the subject site, which could realistically be the location where the public art is currently proposed within the foreshore. So I guess what I'm saying is I would think there's sufficient robustness in the current wording of that condition to enable an either or situation to eventuate.
Okay. Can I ask you to perhaps frame some words that we may consider when we actually get to the item to reflect a change to that condition?
You're not proposing a change at all.
Sorry?
You just said you're not proposing a change at all.
I'll suggest the conditions fine as it is. In the sense, if I can just sort of get into the condition a little bit. It talks about in accordance with the plan policy, the applicant make a contribution to the City of Rockingham equal to 1% of the total construction value of the provision of public art, in this case being $65,000. So the wordings in the condition that would give the developer the option of contributing financially to the city, which would then invest the money into public art into the foreshore reserve.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I actually think if there's $250,000 worth of public art going directly adjacent to the development site, I'd leave the condition and leave the negotiations with the city and the proponent. Because effectively they've got two choices. They can do the public art on the site, or they can do it by way of a contribution. But that contribution can equal $65,000. And if there's $250,000 worth of public art that's already been, it's under consideration, then we could potentially look at that as part of it, I would have thought.
Is that $250,000 spent by the city or by the developer?
It's the developer, yeah. So it'll be a contribution towards public art for something quite significant.
So as I understand it, is it right? I'm understanding then that the city, the developers put up a plan, includes the public art.
Yeah.
You go through a public art approval process. It
Correct.
says, yes, this is okay,
Yeah.
but the developer spends the money.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
the
in that
situation.
instance, the developer would spend it, not the city.
Yes, thank you.
sorry, just to be clear, the policy, we impose a condition as per the policy. They either do the art or they give the city the money. That's under the policy. They're the two options, which is not what has been requested by the applicant.
Yeah,
There would need to be additional words that provide a third option.
Yeah,
Would be would be for the developer to install the public art off the site.
I think it would be actually a different condition.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the various easements that have been requested?
Yeah.
The first one relates to access, and I don't know whether we can put up a plan that actually shows the two issues. So, Mike, can you firstly talk about the public access issue, not to do with the car parking, to do with just public access?
Well, public access is already afforded by the roads that form part of the town centre.
Yep.
And there's also, I think, a clearance that we've issued just recently, subdivision clearance for some new titles in the vicinity of the town centre as well, which include this development site and also Sea Beach Way. So that subdivision clearance was only just issued a week ago. So I imagine that the titles will be coming in the near future that will connect this development site to a public road.
Okay, so then would you agree the conditions are required?
So with respect to access, it's access and parking together, it's not separate. So if I could take a step back, we looked at the development application, we saw that it had significant design merit in relation to the development of this site. If all the parking was going to be fulfilled on the development site, we'd end up with a completely different development outcome, and it wouldn't be a good one. It'd be dominated by parking. So when this development application was being considered, we were also talking to Rain Dial and others in relation to the local development plan for the town centre. the town centre local development plan was also supported by a parking strategy for the town centre. So it was fortuitous that those things all aligned, because it gave us the opportunity to have a robust discussion about how in fact car parking is going to be fulfilled, not just for the brewery site, but also for other lots within the town centre. So the discussion was more based around what was available in terms of parking in the public realm. The foreshore car park that was being built adjacent to the brewery had a subdivision condition for about 20 odd car parking bays, but the developer WABGR saw that there was going to be a demand, no doubt, for parking, so they pushed it out to around 40 bays, thereabouts. Plus, there's significant on-street parking in the vicinity of the development. In the course of those discussions, there was a reciprocal parking discussion orientated around about 148 car parking bays within the actual golf course clubhouse area, which was within a walking catchment distance of the actual brewery, where it was considered that there was about 48 odd surplus car parking bays that could be attributed to the development. So the words reciprocity started coming up in those discussions, that, hey, there's on-site parking for around 40 odd bays. There's also on-street parking. There's 40 odd bays in the reserve that's being built. Plus there's about 148 bays at the actual clubhouse golf course area. So we discounted some of the parking that was remote, because bearing in mind this is the entire precinct of the residential area that was being considered, and it really wasn't feasible to consider people walking at considerable distance. So our focus in relation to parking was twofold. One, on site, which is fine. Two, relying on some of the, at various times, potentially the foreshore car park, but not total reliance. Some on-street parking, but it was still fairly limited in the context of where it was located to the brewery. But more of a reliance on lot 4, which is still part of the development lot at the moment until it's subdivided with titles. And also the actual golf course car parking area. So for that car parking arrangement to work, we believe that there is a need to secure that through a parking easement scenario. Both immediately in terms of the golf course car park, because it's already there, and it is a ready supply of car parking. It's embodied as an offering for reciprocal parking in the parking strategy from WABGR, I presume, because they're the proponents. So it was offered up, and we thought that if they were offering up, it should be provided as part of the public access for parking within the actual town centre to benefit this development and other commercial developments that will come along. Because seriously, we actually think by the time this development gets fully developed, both presumably with the jetty and other works, it will become an iconic development for the city of Rockingham. People will travel here by car. There is currently no public transport, but there will be in the future. So for the moment, there will be reliance on cars, and there won't be sufficient parking provided for the development to work with the parking provided on site. It's about 80 odd bays less.
So the on-street parking, not an issue. The public parking, which is shown there within the reserve, is accessible. The parking within the golf course, I think if we impose a condition like that and the third party doesn't agree.
That is a vexing question. That was even a vexing question for us as well. There's a State Agreement Development Act that WABGR has with the West Australian Planning Commission, with the state government. We're not privy to that agreement, but there is obviously an imperative for this development to happen and to work. And what was offered up to us was a reciprocal parking arrangement with the golf course by WABGR.
So how many bays would be within that in terms of that you think would be required for the development?
Well, we at least 48, but because that was what was identified as surplus.
So out of the shortfall of 80 odd, 48 is reciprocal,
Yep.
that subject to that condition.
Yep.
Okay.
Otherwise, what will happen is that this development relies substantially, disproportionately on car parking within the public realm, which frankly is not what we normally do. Under the town planning scheme, the requirement is quite clear that the parking demand has to be satisfied on site.
Yeah.
So this is an alternative arrangement, and frankly, when I think back on other developments that we've approved elsewhere, we've had, for example, the Chase Tavern in Settlers Avenue in Baldivis. That has about 7 car parking bays on site. It's adjacent to the Baldivis Shopping Centre with a couple of thousand car parking bays. For that development to happen, Stockland, who was also the developer, the landowner at the time of the Chase, with a proponent wanting to build the Chase Tavern, entered into an arrangement whereby reciprocal parking could be provided for about 100 odd parking bays for the tavern, for the customers to park at the shopping centre. We've got other reciprocal parking arrangements between, for example, the Warnbro District Shopping Centre on Warnbro Sound Avenue. So where there's reciprocal parking and access between various commercial uses along the main road that interact with the shopping centre. So it's not unique in the sense of it can be provided in another way, but what we're saying is that's fine, but there needs to be some sort of security of knowing that that will continue into the future. Because I've dealt with another scenario elsewhere where a future landowner comes along, doesn't like for the other landowner and puts a fence up. Or says, no, you're not parking there in the future. I think that's probably unlikely in this circumstance, but we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
So would the city's recommendation change if that car parking is not available? Because I'm very mindful that it's a third-party requirement. Yeah. And
I have thought of that as well, Mr. Presiding Member, because the word severance come up and ambulatory. So what if anything should occur when a condition is found to be invalid? And I guess the question therefore is the particular planning issue cannot be dealt with differently by a differently worded condition. So that's not my speak, this is legal counsel speak. So it would, I don't know how you would frame up a condition otherwise. And I'm concerned enough to say that if this is not accepted by the proponent, then the matter should be deferred to allow further discussions between the city and the proponent and WABGR to come up with an arrangement we could take back to the panel, because I don't know, if anything, what else we could do.
Yeah. The other option for this panel is for it to exercise discretion, and it would be the first time a decision maker has made a decision to vary a scheme requirement. And in this case, it's car parking. Let me say it is common for developments like this, whether it's on a coastal location where land is at a premium and you don't want excessive car parking, or whether it's within a city centre where perhaps there's other options. The DAP panels quite consistently exercise discretion. Now, question here is, given there's public lands, is there scope, and I think there was a reference in the RAR about a parking strategy the city's recently...
It's adopted, and that's what we're applying, and that's why we've applied the condition.
Yeah. And that strategy recognise a reciprocal arrangement, does it?
It does with respect to the golf course car park. It was offered up as a reciprocal parking arrangement with the brewery. That was our understanding of what the outcome was. We had further discussions in relation to Lot 4, because we were concerned that although there was a large number of car parking bays that could be available at the clubhouse, it was still relatively remote from the proposed development. What we think will happen is that if this gets approved, there'll be parking everywhere. It potentially, if people can't park where they want to go, they'll park anywhere they want to go. And it could be ad hoc. And we want to make sure that there's a proper parking arrangement and strategy, I guess, when it comes to where people park and where people know that they can park, so that it can be managed in the future. So Lot 4, we thought, was a good opportunity at a further stage where that could be identified for future reciprocal parking.
Okay. Yeah. Members? Questions of Mr. Ross?
Sorry, I know it's complicated.
No, it is, but also too, as councillors, we cop limited parking arrangements all the time, in that, you know, there's parking in my street, you know, the whole bit. So I just think the reciprocal parking arrangement under these conditions is really valuable to us as a city, just to make sure that I don't get phone calls every second day complaining about the parking. I'll just add that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't sort of overcome this issue of a third party, and there are limitations on decision makers as to what is considered a valid condition. And I raise that because the applicant raised it, so very aware of it, and if it's challenged, so.
Mr. Presiding Member, there's one thing that was mentioned, WABGR joint venture with Warmore. WABGR own the site at the moment. They also own what will be Lot 4. So there is going to be a direct correlation between that occurring. But I can't say the same for the golf course car park, because I understand that's West Australian Planning Commission, but there is an arrangement that that WABGR have to operate the golf course. So everything's connected in different ways. But yes.
Mike, given the nature of discussion this morning, have you in mind perhaps an alternative to that condition that might address some of the issues we've discussed?
Well, the alternative is really probably the unacceptable option, which was the development would need to be modified to provide for more parking. And I honestly do not want to say that, because that wouldn't result in a good planning outcome, because we'd end up with potentially some aspects of the development being sacrificed, and I don't think that would be a good planning outcome. So I'm more than happy to open the doors and have further discussions in relation to, I guess, how parking is going to be resolved. But it relied on a parking strategy that we've already approved. So we are substantially applying that strategy to this situation, and WABGR is still an entity that's involved.
Okay. Yeah. Do we get the impression that the 48 bays in the golf course is clearly
West Australian Planning Commission?
Do we have any idea as to whether that's at risk, that the WA Planning Commission would say no?
Well, they already have an agreement with the developer, WABGR, so I would have thought that it would be a matter that could be taken directly up with the West Australian Planning Commission chairman or otherwise, to say that they have an agreement, they want to proceed, the developer wants to proceed genuinely with the development. Parking is an issue. We have an available parking supply within the town centre. It will provide for the longevity of parking demand within the centre.
That's a reasonable.
It's
a reasonable proposition. There's no guarantee that it's going to be accepted, though. Is there?
That's correct. But then, if a developer can negotiate a state agreement act, I'm sure they can negotiate a parking agreement.
So, Mike, just to confirm, the car parking requirement for this development is how many?
There are 84 thereabouts car parking bays short.
No, you can just,
Yep.
the total requirement?
Okay.
130.
130. How many are being provided within the site?
45.
45. in terms of public roads and public spaces?
159.
Sorry, how many?
159. If you add up the 117 informal on-street parking bays within 5 minutes,
yep,
plus 15 surplus bays and the foreshore car park, which is that car park there, and 27 on-street bays within the surrounding street network.
So 159.
Yes.
But that's still a long distance from this site, and some of those parking bays are actually going to be used by residents of the lots.
And also by other developers.
For visitor parking.
Yeah, okay. So there is access to additional car parking, and there will be no doubt that at some peak periods there'll be a problem in congestion. In the normal course of events, potentially there might be sufficient car parking.
Well, upon full development, once the other development sites get constructed, which are also reliant on the same parking strategy, that may well not be the case.
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand if this panel was to apply some discretion, what the discretion would be in terms of, and I think, Mike, you said 40 odd bays, was that correct?
There was about 39 bays in the foreshore car park with a 15 bay surplus. And about 27 car parking bays within the surrounding street network of the town centre. There are other peripheral car parking bays that Chris is talking about in the order of 117 plus. If you look at all of the parking in the parking strategy, it was actually around 200. But there was no way that we could reasonably conclude that all of that parking was reasonably accessible to the brewery and could be afforded to it. So to us, we still consider that there's a need for additional security in relation to car parking beyond the public realm.
There may well be another angle to this as well, because in the discussions between the city and the developer through the local development plan process, my understanding, we can check with Mr. Dial, is that there was an agreement by WA GBR to potentially construct additional parking bays if the current supply is found to be wanting. So there's potential perhaps to even increase the size of perhaps that foreshore car park there.
Okay.
To provide more parking.
So, members?
Yes, if those conditions were deleted on the basis that they're unsafe, would there be any negotiation with the WAPC, or would that just be, there's no entity to do it?
It'd fall away.
It would fall away.
Yep. And so we would suggest that we go back and say, look, the parking strategy is unworkable, we've just approved. And it's only just been approved.
And concluding that agreement is not a matter for the city, it's a matter for the developer.
Yeah, we would have to go back to WBGR and say, look, your parking strategy that we have just approved and negotiated, you are now saying that can't work because you're contesting these conditions, which frankly makes it awkward, me sitting here thinking that we've got a parking strategy that we can't properly implement.
Members, any other questions of the city's officers?
Sorry.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay. So we move to the item 3.1. So lot 3022 Montefontaine Parade, Port Kennedy, proposed tavern, brewery and short stay accommodation. Members, we've got a recommendation in the RAR to approve, subject to conditions. Is someone prepared to move that?
I'm happy to move.
The recommendation. Mayor Hamblin. A seconder for that? Councillor Jacks. Mayor Hamblin.
Look, I'll just start by saying that this is a great proposal and development, and I know the area really, really well, and it will add so much to that part of the city of Rockingham. the debate around the conditions has been interesting. I'm happy, I think, with the discussions around public art, but I could not agree to the deletions of 20 and 21 conditions. So I just believe that from a parking perspective and the distance between the golf parking and this development, that we need to actually make sure that reciprocal parking works. So
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jex?
I would agree with Mayor Hamblin's comments, and look, parking is a big issue for us. We're a growing city, and really what Deb said, she's spot on with it. The parking is a big issue. It's important that we keep the condition in place.
Thank you.
I'm happy with the public art little change, or
Yeah. So I think there may be changes to some conditions, but is anyone opposed to the motion? No? Anyone wanting to speak to it?
Simply that I concur with the comments from the councillors, but I will be suggesting a modification to condition 14, the public art condition. And I don't know if you want to deal with it afterwards.
No, let's deal with it now, unless.
Okay.
No,
Mr. Syme?
well, I've got a more radical solution to it.
Okay, Lee's foreshadowed a change, and it's.
Let's clean up the public art.
Okay, well, my amendment would be to add to part 4 of condition 14, after the words being 65,000 in value, and I would add to that, and which may be utilised in the adjoining public realm.
Okay, members, are you clear about that?
yes.
Okay, so is there a seconder for that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Mr. Syme, Lee, did you want to sort of talk to that?
Oh, look, simply that, interestingly, this very issue came up yesterday at another meeting in a completely different area, and it was a subject of a lot of debate. I think there is acknowledgement that there are unique situations in which developers do provide public art in areas connected but not entirely within the development site being considered, and I think this is one of those. So I would like to at least cover the issue, ensure that there is going to be public art provided, but also flagging that it could be provided not necessarily on the development site, but in close proximity.
Thank you. Mr. Syme?
Yes, look, I agree entirely with this. I think in the circumstances, we need to find a way where this public art expenditure, which is reasonably expected, can be in a location which makes some sense. Public art means it says public. That means it needs to be accessible and visible by the public. If it is located in the public realm adjacent to this development, it serves its purpose, and I think that's quite a reasonable thing. This is something which has come up before. It is something which the NAP has actually now started to accept. My view is on public art, it should not be seen as a tax on development. It really should be contributing to the public realm, and this would do it.
Thank you. Anyone opposed to it? Anyone wanting to speak to it? I think we obviously had a lot of discussion. I will support that change. I think there's the motion deals with the issue of precedent, but also provides clarity in terms of potentially not oversubscribing to public art requirements. So yeah, I think prepared to support it. Lee, did you close?
No, look, I haven't got anything else to say, but I'd just like to reiterate, because I've got to reiterate that I think this is a unique situation.
Okay, so we're going to put that proposed change to condition 14. All those in favour?
Except it's not unique.
That's unanimous.
Well, you know what I mean.
Mr. Syme, you had something, well, suggested radical. Hopefully that's something.
Look, condition 20 is unsafe. It requires a third-party agreement. It is quite clear that the reciprocal arrangements are required. I think there are ample evidence from the city on that. And that unless that is required, the development really needs a serious rethink. I don't think.
Sorry, John, condition 20 is about public access. 21, I think, is
21.
relates to parking.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think
21, they are linked, yes.
yeah, I think the city officers confirmed that 20, there will be public roads.
Yeah.
So condition
Presiding
20.
Member, if I can just clarify,
Yeah.
condition 20 and 21 both relate to access and parking.
So they're linked.
They're linked,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay, my
access and
apologies.
parking applies to
Okay.
both.
They're linked, and they really require access to the golf course car park. We cannot be guaranteed that that's going to be the case. We're dealing with a third-party agreement. We've got ample evidence that this access to those 48 bays is critical to the overall development in this case, and also to the overall structure plan.
Sorry, John, just to clarify, are you putting forward a motion? Or are you debating the item?
No, I'm going to be putting forward a motion.
Okay, so can you put forward the motion?
Okay,
And then-
I will be, I think we need to defer it.
Okay,
To allow this to be resolved. I think we need to have the agreement with the WAPC before we can proceed.
okay, so you're putting forward a procedural motion
To defer
to defer.
for 180 days, as long as it takes.
Okay, is there a seconder for that procedural?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Jacks. Okay.
Just to clarify.
John, sorry, I did interrupt you, but I wanted to get the standing
Just to
orders thing
clarify, that will
correct.
take you to the 9th of December, that's up to 180 days.
Yeah. No
Okay.
more than, no more than, I mean, it can be, they can do it tomorrow or whatever, but it might take some time.
Okay, so did you want to continue on the reasoning for that?
I'll do a little rave, but not too much. Yeah, look, I think it's quite clear. It requires a third-party agreement. The condition, really, we're all agreeing, I think, we're nervous about actually applying. It is also quite clear that the access to that car park is required as an integral part of the development. Not only this development, but also its place in the emerging precinct. And I think that we need to defer this to allow the proponent to conclude any arrangements to access the any access arrangements to car parking as required by the city.
Thank you. Councillor Jacks, did you want to make comment on that motion?
I just think it's sensible. We need to be very careful here. This will have an impact on our city. And it's a big issue with residents around parking, and there's other developments going on around. I just think it's a big issue. It's a big picture. I think it's important that we're prudent and take some time to work through the things that's obviously the obstacle here.
Okay, thank you. Now, it is a procedural motion, so there's no opportunity to debate it. I will put that motion. All those in favour? Opposed? The motion is carried. So deferred for 120 days?
180.
Sorry?
Up to.
Yeah, okay. And just for the purposes of the applicant and the city, John, we might just need to provide some detailed clarification on that. So we'll go through the balance of the agenda. Sorry. Part C, so SAT items are listed on the agenda. Item 2, general business. Members, any general business? No, leads me to item 3, meeting closure. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you hopefully within 120 days, and I declare the meeting closed at 11:10. Thank you.
It's 180.
Sorry?
180 days.
180?
Up to 180.
All right.